Oh, nice. That's good.
And there it
It's
is.
as intimidating as a recording studio, you know? It's
Yes.
like go in the little booth,
Yep.
sing your song, sing your song. We'll be here
You've
saying,
been, you've been notified.
yeah, okay.
Welcome
See,
to another episode of the Popko Project Podcast. Today I'm joined by singer-songwriter Jonathon Penn. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for just staying up late to do it.
It's all part of the journey. It's part of this passion project that I call this podcast, and I appreciate you responding to my message via Instagram. So
Yeah. Well, I was stoked to see it, and yeah, like we were talking about earlier, I'm a fan, um, and so was super happy to answer the call.
the algorithm on Instagram has been very good to me this year. I've been fed a lot of great new music. I was introduced to you on Instagram, specifically Hawk Circling and Thick and Thin. And
Cool.
thankfully, the internet exists because you're able to reach out directly to some artists, and hopefully they, you know, will respond. And I got lucky.
Yeah,
So
cool. So that's and I guess like what did I'm I'm trying to think of like the when you think of like what are you looking for in music? And like we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but like what did you hear in that was exciting to you?
well, Thick and Thin for me, right off the bat, like you painted a picture, and I don't know if this was, on purpose for, what you wrote the song about, but for me, listening to that, it like in my head, I pictured that song playing during a family gathering. Um, the whole family's there. Maybe it's a holiday or whatever it might be, and like I'm putting silverware on the table, or making place settings, or serving dinner for a family. And that's just kind of the the vibe I got from that, and I was just like, this is great, you know.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, well, I feel like uh there's nothing maybe more satisfying or something maybe as an artist or someone any communicator I guess to feel like understood sort of and like I think part of this project is a reaching out of trying to communicate something some feeling or something, and so I feel like the image I have in my head of that song, like what that song is about, and it's not like about one thing necessarily, but like it's basically that sort of
Okay,
reflecting on a life surrounded by the people you love or something. So
you
anyways,
nailed
like
it.
it sort of landed with you, which feels cool, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's gotta be hard as an artist because like a lot of times artists don't want to say what songs are about because they want it to kind of land on people however they need it to be felt in whatever moment they're in, which is I think the coolest thing about music at times. But you have a new record out that those two songs I just mentioned is on. It's called "It Took a Long Time to Get Young," and I think there's probably a lot in that title. Even like that's
Yeah,
it's a great title. So if you're watching, listen to this, go stream the album from Jonathan Penn, and then come back and listen to the conversation. But it's really good. It's a really great album. It's just it's like what did I say? It's just it's very like a self-reflecting type of journey. I think it's 11 songs.
yeah.
Um, it's just really well done.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for listening. And if anyone paused and went back and listened to it and is coming back to listen to the podcast, thank you for listening. I appreciate that. Yeah, title. The title was interesting. It is a reference to a Picasso quote that's sort of similar with better grammar, I believe. But it took a long time to get young was the thing that sang better, or was the thing that came out when I started working on that song. And it's like I didn't know that was what the whole thing was about, the whole like set of songs, until very late in the process. I guess we were actually recording the album, which was kind of 2 years probably into a journey with some of the songs. Some of the songs came together right before that recording process or like going into the studio, but many of them had been around for a long time, uh, and that song had been around for a long time. But as I started to like sort of pull the pieces together, I think I realized that like that was kind of the thesis statement for the record or the project, and so I had a good collaborator who was latching on to that as they're like, this is the thing, like this is, and it was her favorite song. This is the female vocalist that you hear throughout some of the songs, and I had been working with her for a few months leading up to recording the album, on writing and revising and pre-production and stuff. And yeah, she just was like, this is it. And she helped me hear it in a different way. And then I realized, whoa, like this is sort of like what this whole record is about, is like recapturing that, that youth, that like spontaneity, that like artistry that you have. Like it's like the basic, you see your kids. I mean, you have a kid, just one kid or
I have two.
two? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kids are natural born artists. They
Hmm.
just they create stuff without any self-consciousness. And it takes like the world and life to be like, no, you're not good at that, or like that doesn't amount to anything, and that's like really sad. But you see
Hmm.
it in like literally every kid is like my son, he's 3 this morning, and or he's like drawing a sea urchin, and he's like, look at the sea urchin, and he's just like stoked on it. And my daughter's 5, and she making this like purse out of paper and like a little string, and it's just like I'm like, how did you think to do that? She's like, I just saw the purse, and so then I like made it. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. It's like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're trying to do with music. I just like heard the thing, or I imagined the thing in my head, and I tried to make it. And she's not like, is it good? She's just like, I made it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful thing. And so it was, the whole project was about, I think, reconnecting with that sense of like, it's a little bit of it's like conviction in something, and it's like, it's self-confidence. It's true it's like true self-confidence, like knowing that, like being comfortable with yourself and not letting the world tell you something is good or bad or worthwhile or not. And I had been trained out of that. I had sort of grown up with that, I think, sensibility, and was making music when I was younger. I was in bands in high school, like pop punk bands and emo bands, which is what we were talking about, some other connections on music when we were younger. And then was doing kind of like a singer-songwriter project like 20 something years ago, around like when I just was in college, but then was just like systematically trained away from that kind of thinking, that sort of free, like just doing something, following my own intuition, was systematically trained out of me in like the corporate world and in business and finance, which is maybe an unfair thing to say, but it did happen to me. And so it sort of took a rejection of that worldview, basically, kind of leaving that field, or at least the way I was doing it, leaving it in that sense. And then I didn't know what I was doing, and I found my way back into music and sort of reconnected with this sense of trusting myself again, just in many ways, but it like sort of manifested in this project, in this music, and kind of like being willing to pursue the whole thing all the way to a release, which we can talk about. Like that journey as an independent artist is full of it's challenging,
Yeah.
like the sort of dealing with the combination of indifference and or like apathy and or like, what are you doing? You just are forced to answer the question for yourself, why am I doing this, a lot in that kind of process. And I think ultimately it ends up being a good thing, because if you come out the other end of it, you know exactly why you were doing it the
Hmm.
whole time. But it didn't feel very good, to be honest, the
Yeah.
whole the whole time. So anyways, that was a very long-winded start to it, but hopefully that like gives us some shooting off points.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to get into kind of the lead up to this, but before we get further, Would you be able to stand up to turn your light back on? Because I think it's getting darker in LA.
Yes, yes. But are you going to be okay if I have to do this like every
Yeah,
couple of
absolutely.
Okay.
I think your blinds went down and
Okay. Lights back on. It's making me a better musician because I don't get to look at anything when I'm out here. If I'm ever out here at this hour practicing or something, working on tunes, I'm like playing the guitar. I'm like, where's the fifth fret? Can't see it. Darn. Okay.
but I feel like for maybe a long time, music was almost like private to you, and you were, which is crazy, is you mentioned it earlier, you had a career in finance,
Yeah.
and then one day you decided, I'm done. And it's funny because I actually interviewed a guy. He went by the name of Telco.
Okay.
His real name is Michael Gilbride, I believe. This is probably this will be episode 272. I think he was like one of the first like maybe 10 episodes. Similar thing. He was successful in finance and he's like, you know what? I'm done with this. And he wanted to do music full time. And I'm sure that's something scary. I'm sure it's something that people around you are like, why would you do this? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. You mentioned you were in bands before. You've recorded music, obviously, but you had a career in finance, and then one day, or maybe not one day, but at some point in your life, you're like, I have to leave that world, and I have to try and make this work. And talk about
Yeah.
that whole situation.
It was kind of less linear than that. But it's not too far off. Yeah, so I was in bands in high school. I had this solo project called Jonah Like the Whale. The music is on Spotify. We have one monthly listener, my buddy Greg Sobczak, who's co-produced the stuff. But like that was when I was at, I would say, like my happiest point in terms of like a creative, just like freedom and just like really feeling like I didn't care what anyone else thought at the time. It was awesome, actually, on reflection. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm sure at the time it felt also pretty similar. Like everyone's like, what are you doing? Because no one, it's just like, I don't know, music is like this, for me, music is this thing. It always feels a little lonely because I'll have these experiences where I have this like very intense feeling about a song or a record or like a full album or an artist or something, and I try to find other people that feel the same way, and everyone has their own taste, and I feel like my taste has always just been a little bit off from and I just never found like people that were like, oh yeah, I'm so into the same thing that you're into. I mean, it's not entirely true, but because there are, I've found some common ground with some people over time, but music kind of gave me that feeling all when I was younger, but I didn't care because again, I was like very happy to do it for myself at the time. Then I got into like, went to college, I was on Wall Street, and music became a joke. Like people would joke about it. They're like, "You would do music," It's just because like I think in that world, sort of like putting yourself out there was like made people uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think it got made fun of, and so I sort of like was like, well, that's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I'm like, so I sort of like bottled up this whole this whole part of my personality or self or whatever for a long time. I still always was a huge fan of music, and we were talking about like these music moments that you have where you're just like mind feels blown and you're like, how did I not know this artist or this song or whatever before this moment? And I was always having those. So I always felt this deep connection to music that whole time, but really didn't pursue much at all. So I worked in New York for a couple of years, and I was in Boston. I went to business school at Harvard Business School. While at business school, I took piano lessons from some person not related to I used the time at business school to like do a lot of things that weren't business related, which was maybe a clue of what was coming. But like I got really into like trying to learn classical piano. So I had this like Russian piano teacher who was very mean and was like very focused on my hand position and like the tone and stuff, which was on reflection very cool. But at the time, wasn't helping me play like tunes that I liked. Okay, I'm gonna go get the lights. I'll bring my computer with me.
Lights,
This
camera,
is like
action.
very unorthodox, but
It's all right.
I'm sure.
We're in real life. This is real life.
Yeah, this is real life of a parent. You can see
Yep.
I'm sharing my studio space with surfboards and my kids' play structure.
Love
So,
that.
yeah, this is real life. Anyway, so I I was like trying. Even at the time, and this was back in like 2014. I I was playing some piano, but the guitar had been, and the guitar was my primary instrument. I played guitar in my high school bands. I wrote songs. I didn't sing much. I was like the backup singer in our high school band. We wanted to be like Taking Back Sunday. I was like John Nolan, if that analogy resonates with any listeners. Uh, the guitarist
Yeah.
that sings, but he's not the lead singer. But the guitar was like in a case, wasn't playing it at all, and that was like 2014, true all the way until like 2022, when I left. I left the firm that I was at in Boston at the time. I didn't know what I was gonna do. Was actually working on a novel because another passion was literature. And so I was working on this novel, had a lot of words written for this novel idea that I had, but started to procrastinate. And in the procrastination, realized like what I started doing is I like picked up this guitar. This is like my dad's old acoustic guitar.
Oh,
My
cool.
dad had passed away like a year prior, which is an important part of the story that I skipped over, but we can come back to that.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are both his old guitars actually. But the acoustic guitar, I got out of the case and just was like messing around to avoid working on this novel, because I realized like I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't like writing. I think that's what I realized around this time. And as I started playing the guitar again, I've always been like, I learn one thing on a guitar, like one new chord or something, and then I'm like always writing. I'm making something new with it. I've never been the guy that like learns how to play a whole song and then can play like, here's like a Beatles song, or here's like a Tom Petty song. I literally know no. I really know very few other songs. It's always like I like this part of a Tom Petty song, like what's going on here. So I'll like look up the tab. This is like what I still do this, frankly. What's the chord there? And I'm like, ooh, that's a cool chord, or like a cool transition that I've never seen before. Not saying it's always like the most novel thing, but it's just something I didn't. And then I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well I'm gonna write, and then I write a song or an idea with that idea. So I just started doing that, and having like 20 years of listening experience without playing was fascinating, because the playing, I was never an amazing guitarist to begin with. The playing stuff came back super quickly, but the taste, basically cultivating like what I'm into, had just been happening a lot in the background. And so then that applied all of a sudden to like the guitar skills, and all of a sudden I started spending a lot more time around the guitar, not writing the novel, and like kind of writing songs again, which was when I was doing that kind of in that college era, in that singer-songwriter era with Jonah Like the Whale. Like that was, I was just back in that mode. It's like songs started coming together. I immediately was like, how am I going to capture these ideas? So I started like thinking about recording technology and building like a little home studio, which is how I did it before, with like very, very rudimentary technology at the time, and bad microphones. And so I was like, well, I did it before that way. So I started cobbling together this like system and made some demos, and had that immediate feeling, which one I think often gets in this world of like, well, that's not how it sounded in my head, which I still get when I'm working on new demos. It's like, darn it,
Yeah.
not quite the thing.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that was the first, I'll kind of stop it. We could like reassess where we are, but like that was the first moment where I had this, there was like this big thrust of energy. And it's like you're feeling something, you have this vision of what you're trying to create as an artist. And then the reality is like, no, that's not what you can create. You know, whether it's like a limitation you have with your voice or your technical skills or your recording skills, all of those things I think came into play in that process. But it was the first one of where I was like, ugh, this is like not even close. Okay, I'm gonna go get the light again. This is so bad. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I don't understand what is going on with my garage. Like, this is so bad.
Well, you're being what do you call it? Efficient with your energy.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's like some energy
Yeah,
conservation.
if you're not there, then just the lights go out.
California, love it.
Save the grid.
So yeah. Anyways, it would take me months, I think, to sort of like get back, and then for a while I was kind of toiling around in secret with these demos that I was working on, still finding it like that was the thing that was energizing. And part of this like learning, kind of reconnecting with myself, this like it took a long time to be young concept was learning this intuition, or like this following the energy, you know, like I've talked about this before with friends. It's like, if you have do you ever have a friend that's like you leave that conversation, you feel like super energized versus like you leave the conversation, you feel like something got like sucked out of you. And you know, there's those are the extremes, but like it's learning to like really pay attention to that feeling. What in life is just drawing you towards it? What is the thing that you would do and not eat and never get paid, and like it like distracts you from everything. And for me, that was very clearly music. I could feel that feeling strongly again, and so I started to like run towards that. But even then, this was very confusing to the world around me. You know, like my sort of people, because my people weren't artists. My people were business people, or they were like family people that didn't understand, that didn't live with artists. And so like I felt very fish out of water at this moment in life because I didn't know what was going on. But I think what I was understanding again was that, oh, like I'm just like, part of me is an artist, and this is the artist part of me trying to take the reins and telling me like, this is the thing you should go do, you know, damn the torpedoes.
I mean, that had to have been a pretty a big pull. I mean, to kind of, I don't want to say throw away, but kind of end what you had to dive fully into what you're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, it was like it was one of these things that I just couldn't. I think I realized at some point, like, I'm going to be miserable if I don't pursue this. I'd rather be miserable pursuing it than miserable not pursuing it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's like part of life, right? And but there's like all these quotes that something like try and fail instead of like, you know, staying
Fail
where
to
you are.
try, you
Yeah,
know?
just like just living with the thing that you always want to do but never did, and like then you're 90 years old on your deathbed and you're like, oh man,
I
I just.
didn't want to be that. And I think that to maybe bring it back a little bit to, and I don't want to dwell on like the, whole I lost a dad thing, because like I think a lot of people have our age, right, are like starting to lose friends and family members. So it is a universal thing, but like it certainly was a wake up call in a sense of like, don't get to the end of life, whenever that is. Like my dad was 70, which seemed kind of young, and he was super healthy up until he was not. And so it was like, we were all like, well, that kind of seems unfair and fast and shitty, frankly. But like, don't get to that point and having not done the thing that you always kind of hoped you could do. I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to be because who knows if I'll even get to be 70, you know,
Yeah.
I like, so, and I really feel like with, when you have this kind of feeling, like you just feel like you need to go pursue something, there's something, maybe the only like satisfying thing, like truly satisfying thing is like having gotten to the end of it, having released the album. I'm working on new stuff, so this isn't entirely true anymore, but like there is this feeling of like, well, like I have said something I wanted to say, and like that feels good.
Hmm.
And so now if I did like you know, die or get sick or die, not to be morbid or whatever, it's like at least I didn't leave unsaid a bunch of stuff that I wanted to say, or like a bunch of processing that I was going to put off until retirement or
Hmm.
until whatever, like, you know, until my kids got older, like, and this was a lot of the conversation I was having around this time was like, you know, I had young kids, they're in their sorry, youngest, you know, this is like the time they're really young. There's a lot of like responsibility at home, and I was contributing in all of that and trying to do as much as I could. But so it was like, can't you wait until the kids are older? And I kind of had this feeling like, no, I can't. Like, I'm gonna have to do both. I'm gonna have to find a way to do both. And yeah, I'm grateful for my wife, who's sort of like, oh, let me do that, you know, sort of like let that happen, you
Yeah.
know. We've been together since we were 14, so
Yeah.
she was never, she didn't like the high school bands, the singer-songwriter project, or this project, but she's, you know, she's coming around. There's like,
Yeah.
you know, she listened one time to the new record, and she said, okay, like 10 of the 11 songs are like, okay. That's what she said, which I thought was like great. That's like Pitchfork best new music to
Yeah.
me, you
Yeah.
know.
But you did it though. Like, I mean, like, think about how many people go through life wanting to do something, whatever it might be, and then that just feeling that like now is not the right time, or I'll do it when my kids are older, or I'll do it whenever, you know, name it, right? It's like,
Yeah,
and not everyone says, fuck it, I'm gonna do this. Like, not everyone does that. So like that's an amazing thing that you're able to be like, I have to do this because if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it, and it'll be a regret that I have my entire life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my dad 21 years ago.
Shit.
So I can appreciate like, you know, moments of like happen in your life where it's a turning point, right? It's something like that happens, or like when I turned 40 a few years ago, like that to me was like, fuck. If I'm lucky, if I'm lucky and live till 80, my life is essentially halfway over.
Yeah,
And that's still this day is kind of um still messes with me a little bit. And then you have
yeah,
kids, and then you want to live forever. And then you think about, what if I'm not here? What if I don't get to see XYZ in their
yeah.
lives? It's like this life that we live is just so complicated, and we only get to do it once. And it's like, what are we going to do with it when we're here?
Totally,
So
totally.
the fact
Yeah,
that you
and
did it,
like,
man.
yeah, of course, like you have to have a balance, right? You can't be like a complete hedonist.
Right.
That's the challenge. But like, can you live? I've thought about this for a long time. Can you live life like? Can you live a responsible adult life, but with the mentality like, I may not be here next week, and still like, if I'm not going to be here next week, are the things that I'm doing this week still something I'd be happy to do if I only had 1 week left, you know? And like that's the extreme. Like, it's kind of, and of course, like if you only had one day left, maybe you wouldn't pay taxes, you know, you wouldn't do any of this sort of like mundane day-to-day stuff, life administration stuff that you have to do to kind of like live an adult normal life. So you can't, it's a little bit of a thought experiment, but I think I've always been trying to pursue that, like, more. Like, can you get closer to the bone there? Can you like take a little more risk there, not doing things that you would consider frivolous at the end of life, to
Hmm.
focus on the things that you think you might like reflect on at the end of life and be like, well, that was time well spent. You
Hmm.
know, it's like time with your kids, or like, um, or time with pursuing something hard for its own sake. You know, like, or art, I think is like that. It's like I mean, it's like a sad thing to think about the alternative, which would have been like like an 85% done version of some of the songs on this record that never saw the light of day because I just got like scared or something, or didn't have time to see it through, And again, it's like not for any commercial outcome or any even like artistic outcome. It's just because it's a record of my life, my life, my experience, how I felt, like what I believed in at that point. And I found at one point in one of the sort of like low points in the process of going through the release, I found myself like listening to some of the old music that I had made, 20 something years ago. And I found myself connecting to those songs as an adult in a very different way. Like songs that didn't entirely make sense to me at the time. Like some of the lyrics I think were like in this, like it wasn't a clear narrative or something. It was, I'm sure you've talked to a bunch of artists. By the way, I didn't ask you this, but do you make music too?
I don't.
Okay. All right. But you've this idea of like someone, you're like working on a song. Sometimes people will like, kind of scat out, or like, they'll just be like playing a guitar part and like just sing the melody that comes to mind. It's a half formed word, and the words will kind of present themselves to you. And sometimes I think of songwriting as like the best version of songwriting is getting out of the way. Don't think, just like let this thing that you're feeling or whatever reveal itself to you. Words will emerge. And a lot of songs I think that I was writing in that time, like 20 years ago, were made in that way, where it was just like something emerged, some idea, and then you kind of follow the thread. It's a little bit of like what is this song trying to be, but you may not totally understand it. I find those are my favorite songs now. Mm-hmm. Those songs that I didn't fully understand. It wasn't like this top-down idea of, I want to write a song with this kind of message and like I'm going to make a story about this. It's like the song happens and then you're kind of like left with the song at the end of it, and you're like, is it a song? What does it mean? But you just like trust it or whatever. You like the vibe, the way it feels or the way it makes you feel, but you don't totally understand it completely. Those things can reveal themselves in totally different ways to you. Mm-hmm. And I found myself having that experience of some of these tunes like 20 years later. And I was like, this is so cool. And so then again, back to the, like, it was like another moment where I'm like, okay, well, again, this is why I need to be doing this now, because 20 years from now, I might need these songs, or someone else might have that same experience. And yeah, there's like this balance, I think, between the crafting something and having something emerge inspired. And clearly songwriting, I think, is both. It's a cool merger of both. Some songs are more crafted than others. Some are more inspired or whatever. And I don't think one's necessarily better than the other. But I do feel like at this time, songs that I feel like I had a handle on, like that I understood completely, are less interesting to me over time than the ones that were like, didn't see that coming and don't completely understand it. Like, I feel like that's going to reward re-listening the same way that like my favorite music of other artists has that same thing. It's like, if I can understand it entirely on a first listen, it's unlikely to be the thing that I'm like listening to again and again and again and can never get to the bottom of, like our favorite music. Like, you can never get to the bottom of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Were the songs on this new record, were a lot of them intentional, or did a lot of them kind of just happen, like as we're talking about now?
Yeah, it was like, I'd say this record was maybe like a good mix where some of the early songs definitely just happened, and they were because again, I wasn't like setting out to write music again. I was setting out to write a novel, which is still in the can. It's in my computer somewhere, the hard drive. I was
That's good.
Looking at a draft the other day. It's a lot of work that will probably never see the light of day. But so yeah, it's fun to think about actually. So let's see, The Devil I Know, Hawk Circling, those were two early songs, like very early. Then there were songs that were I had sort of gathered, I think, 18 songs that I kind of did a pre-production process where I went to a studio, like a local studio here, and did one day, and I just recorded one or two takes, just a vocal and a guitar, or a piano and a vocal. And I wanted to like sort of put everything on the same basis, like same comparison point, because I had voice memos. I had done some more developed demos of a few songs, but I just wanted to have like a fair starting point of the song for all 18. And then I had a couple collaborators that I was starting to work with, and was going to try to skinny it down to like, okay, what are the 10 to 12 songs we're going to actually work on for an album? Because 18 felt like too many. And I also liked the idea of like, if you have 18, you're sort of less sensitive, to it's good to have like a lot, because then you can just kill some. And even though everyone's like, oh, you're killing one of my babies, it's like, well, but you did like this one,
Yeah.
so it makes it a little easier for yourself, I think, when you're assessing music, and also like when you're working with people, because then they feel less, maybe less pressure they feel less bad telling you that like, that song's not that good.
Yeah, but you can always go back and revisit those songs,
and that's happening today, which is super interesting. But anyway, so like I had 18 that I took to the studio, Middle Ridge Studio, and did that process. And there was something about just like the commitment to the whole process that I think like the floodgates were open. And so I got like two more songs that came sort of in the back door at the last moment, song 19 and 20, which both ended up making the record. That was Letting Loose and Compensation were both, and Thick and Thin. Those were the last three songs. That was 18, 19, and 20. All three of those made it on. So there were like two that were very early that made it. But in that two, there were probably like three others that didn't make it. And then there was this middle period, which was a period I would describe as having like a lot of ups and downs in terms of my commitment to the project, conviction in what I was doing, confidence as a writer, et cetera, et cetera. Where my batting average was like probably, I guess, less than 50% or something on what ended up making it. But it was cool because I think it was kind of an 18-month writing period, and it wasn't like a burst. It was kind of steady throughout, maybe with like 4 patches of like a bunch of songs came in the middle or in the beginning, and then like a bunch of songs here, and then like songs here, and then at the end. And there were like, it was like a couple songs from each of those periods ended up surviving or sort of like making it into the final list of songs. And we went to Sonic Ranch with 12 songs, and I was happy to put all 12 on a record, but it didn't fit on a single LP, like a single vinyl. Mm-hmm. So there is one song that I am happy about and happy that we made there, but it was cut for the LP. So I don't know what's going to happen with that one.
Next one.
Yeah.
Next one.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, I thought for sure that could be the case, or like you could maybe do a project around that song or something, but some of the new stuff I'm working on, it doesn't fit. It's like, it's weird because the stuff I'm working on now, and I'm doing demos and pre-production work on now, is like, it's been 2 years since we recorded the last one. So it's just like, that's just been released now. That release cycle is such a long cycle that it's sort of like, I don't know. It just doesn't work with the new set of material, I don't think. And so it might be, but it's interesting because I have friends who like, that's their favorite song.
Really?
So it's like a secret song. Back in the day, I had secret songs. You'd put them like, because this was something that they did, and like Brand New did this, I think.
Yeah.
Or something. I was inspired. Like
those are the best.
It'd be like 8 minutes of silence,
Mm-hmm.
and then there'd be like this awesome tune. I did that I did a full length called A Midwest Winter. Jonah Like the Whales, the band. Check it out. The last song there's a secret song, which I think is probably the best song. And it's such a hilarious, like dumb artist thing. It's like, okay, first of all, no one listened to the whole record, right? Right. And like, certainly no one was going to like listen to find in the eight, but that was what was so cool about the project, or the way I thought about it at that time, is like, no, it's like, if I had an artistic vision and it was inspired by other people. It wasn't like I came up with this like myself or something. It was inspired by people like whatever the songwriter, was his name, Jesse from Brand New, and his whole thing. But I'm like, no, this is what you would do if you were like trying to make an artistic statement.
Yeah.
You would bury this cool song in after 8 months or 8 minutes of silence in the last track of the album. Secret song.
Yeah, dude, a lot of bands. I think Blink-182 did that on their "Take Off Your Pants and Jacket" album.
Yeah.
It was always a nice surprise. It really was.
It just like rewards like the heads, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't work in today's world, right? Like, you know.
Well, that's what's really sad, and like I do think about that with like what have we gained and what have we lost in this modern kind of streaming technology environment. Like, clearly there's tons of things that we've gained, but like there are definitely some losses. And like us, I think you're right. Like a move like that would be very, just like, you know, no label would support that.
Right.
No business person would support that.
Yeah, and talk about that. Like, you know, you re-entering this, you know, or this part of your life, and it's vastly different than what you knew, you know, 20 years ago. Like, was that a struggle? Like, this is like a new landscape.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't like, you know, to be clear, it's not like I wasn't like a popular artist 20 years ago. So it wasn't like I was like, there was a landscape of media that I was navigating then, and then learning how to like navigate things in the new economy, or like I was selling physical records 20 years ago and now I'm not. So but it was more like, clearly the world for independent artists had changed to such an extent that, and it was changing so fast. So I had to basically like everything I had to learn, from like social media, to print, radio, the whole landscape was just all stuff that I had no idea about. I mean, and what I did, one thing maybe I did learn from my business building days, is like, I started at some point, once I made the album, and then I went through a 6-month period where I was like, I'm not even going to release it. That was like a down period in this wave, in this oscillation I had. But once I decided I was going to release it, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to treat this like this is an asset, and I'm creating a business. What would I do if I was trying to build a brand and a business? And I treated it essentially like, and I did establish like a record label, like I set it up properly with like an LLC and stuff. And I basically said, okay, if I was an independent record label that believed in an artist, I tried to separate, like, I tried to pretend like, if you just believed in this artist project long term, and you were like a long-term thinker on it, what would you do? What functions would you set up? What would you do yourself? What would you find partners for? And then what would you invest? What would you be willing to invest? How would you think about it as an investor would? Where I think an independent label is like pretty understanding that they're going to lose money on a first record project with the new artist, and, you know, maybe break even on a second one, and maybe start making money on a third. But it's like, it's this long-term vision, and it's not really, it's partially economic, but it's partially not, you know. So I sort of I was able to apply some of the business skills, I think, in just like mindset, to sort of developing the project. Once the art was made, I think if I had like come at it the other way and been like, okay, I'm gonna, as a business, think like make a record and try to like commercialize a record, I mean, that obviously would have been a really bad business. but it would have nenever worked.
Right.
It wouldn't, or at least I wouldn't have gotten to like art that I think was like true and something I was proud of as a piece of art. But it took this like, okay, like I did the thing. I decided that I think it was worth sharing. And so now, like, how am I going to get people to listen to this thing? Because the thing that I think was a bummer about the music 20 years ago is that like it just didn't get heard because I didn't know any of this stuff that I know now about like building something. And I just kind of like assumed, I mean, at the time, I guess I was a little bit entrepreneurial about it. I think I sent demos or like a version of an EP I made to like 100 record labels. Actual physical CD, CDRs. I think I had like maybe like I had some printed face on it. I sent a letter to like the A&R departments of 100 of like labels, and I think I got like 4 responses. One of the responses was from my favorite record label at the time, Drive Through Records. They said, "You need to write. We like what you're doing, but you need to write more choruses." That was their feedback, which was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I did then write more choruses for the rest of my life. I've always remembered that. So thank you, whoever listened to that at Drive Through Records. But that was the extent of it. Like I didn't know anything other than to try to get signed to a label at the time. And I think maybe at the time there was less that independent artists could do. So that's the positive and the negative. Like
Right.
at the time, if you didn't have a label, you didn't have distribution.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have access points. Like we were going to Tower Records to buy CDs, or like Best Buy, loved that experience of like getting those. So if you didn't have a label, you couldn't get an album made. You couldn't get a producer to work on a project, and you weren't going to get distribution. And so you basically didn't have a band. You were obviously weren't touring or anything. And I was in college at the time. I think some of the other responses I had gotten were something like, you're in college. You need to drop out of college and like consider touring full time. If you're not willing to do that, then like,
good luck. Yeah.
What are we even talking about? Like, but nowadays, like the good is, it's very easy to get your music on all the digital platforms. Obviously, everyone can have a social media presence, and there is the promise of virality, which I think is maybe the worst thing for the industry, because it's like there's 1 out of every million artists or 10 million artists or something is discovered on a platform like TikTok or Instagram, playing a song on acoustic guitar. And it captivates the world, and then they have a viable career that comes from it, and that has happened. And so I think that too many people think that that's the most likely path to success. I think, and I think it's just like a really low probability path. And so, anyways, I guess I was like trying to put some of the business building skills that I had around like, what would you do if you weren't going to try to rely on something like that? Because I also just was pretty uncomfortable with the idea of social media in the beginning, and still am, of like
It's
being
tough.
the guy on the acoustic guitar in front of the camera all the time. Doesn't feel great.
I agree. I feel like I missed that, like being okay with that by like 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. There's people that are, I think you're right. It's like younger. I think I'm like a millennial technically, but there's some gap between, in the cohort where you were either like it was a Snapchat. Was that the thing? It was like you were either a Snapchat millennial or you were not. And it's like and I was not, but like if you're not comfortable with that, it's like these are like just different mindsets. They should break our demographic cohort into 2.
yeah. I always feel like, who the hell am I, and why would anyone care? It's weird.
Yes.
You know.
Well, that is that. Okay. So how do you deal with that generally though? Because I feel like this is the general problem with like, thinking of yourself, any, in what you're doing, what I'm trying to do. It's like, is it a little bit like why would anyone care? It's like, it's a little bit like, it's a little gross,
Yeah,
you know?
it's disgusting. Yeah, it's yes, gross is a perfect word. It's weird. It's but
But
like
I'm sure you've had moments where you really connect either in a conversation with an artist or with a fan, and then they just like then you understand like why it's like it makes it worth doing it. It makes it worth feeling like that gross feeling. It's like, okay, well, I did this because I did. There was some connection that you
mhm,
were after, some
yeah.
reason you were doing the thing, and occasionally the digital universe will deliver that experience. It's not very often. Most of the time, it like feels like things are going into the void, which is
Yeah.
unsatisfying.
Yeah, it's one of those things like could probably be a lot more successful if I was to open myself up to more of that. Um, and there's every day I'm like, you either have to decide if you want to take this to the next level or if you're just okay with where it is and it just being a very much a hobby. And I struggle with that every day. It's sometimes I wonder if this is, this is a good use of my time, so to
Mm.
speak. But I mean, and then leading up to it, like there's times where it'd be like I have like a podcast to do tonight. I'm like, ah man, I really just wish I just didn't have to do it. I don't feel like it. But the minute I hit record, it's like, okay, I love doing this.
Hmm.
This is great. But we talked about earlier, it's like, does anyone really care? Like my goal with this whole platform is to really I want to introduce, well, there's two things. There's one, I don't know how to perform music, write music, or anything like that. So this is like my way into music, right? Um, and the second part is I'm drawing a blank here. I told you I wouldn't be at my best tonight. It's very late.
Well, it is late, folks. It is 12 o'clock on the
Is it
East
already?
Coast, so
Whoo,
is
it
it
is. Um,
12:04? So you're being a hero.
what was I? What
This,
was I? Oh, I want to introduce people to music that they may not have heard otherwise. I always thought like, you know, creating this and people would be like, you know, Jonathan Penn would be like, oh, you know what? I'm releasing a new album. I gotta talk to Popko. Like, I gotta get on his show. Like, I want to, like, he's got a great audience, and I want to reach them, and he's got, all this. Like, that's ultimately like I'm not doing this for fame or fortune. It's just like it's a passion project, and I'm just very passionate about good music, and I just want to share that with other people.
yeah. Well, I think it's awesome. I think this question that you have, like this, sometimes it's like this existential question of like, what am I doing? Like, is this a good use of my time? This is like the main challenge in life. I
Yeah,
think this question, and I think I'm not sure we ever know the answer to that really, or like, because there's so many you have so many choices. Like you could literally be doing anything else right now. You could be sleeping, right?
that's the thing. Like, what else would I be doing? If I
Well,
was watching,
you could be sleeping.
I wouldn't be. Right now I'm watching Breaking Bad for the second
No,
time.
but that's the thing. Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot lately because like when an album comes out and it's sort of, you feel like it went out into the void, whatever. It feels unsatisfying. You didn't, what the press wasn't exactly what the response, the listener response, whatever. It's just, it all feels frankly like a little bit like, does anyone care? So I have these moments of doubt all the time, and they happen around releases. And I had that experience after like all the single releases and then the full album too. But I started to think about this. I was talking to a friend today about this. Actually, he's an investor that I'm still talking to, but he's doing his own thing. He started his own investment business. It's an entrepreneurial venture that very much parallels the artist journey, which is super interesting. Actually, like the way he's doing investing, it's like it creates all this doubt about like what am I doing with my time and my life. And so we sort of swap story all the time. And I think about like, okay, I could do something that would like be kind of wasting time. I might like mull over. I might like look at my Spotify statistics to see how many people listen to music my music today, you know? And like, if it's a good day, that makes me feel better. I'm like, oh, I'm so achieving the thing. If it's bad or worse than it was the day before, I'm like, oh, this is the worst. You know, it like changes the way I think about my project, which is so dumb. Like I realize that like psychologically, this is like not the way. And I start to think like, that's never going to do it, like amount to anything. If I just keep working, if I just keep going, if I just like every day write a little bit, keep working, keep listening really carefully, find out what I love, try to make stuff that feels the same way, keep like listening to myself, keep following this intuition, keep doing projects, keep building stuff. After some period of time, I'll be able to look back and I'll have done I'll have done something at least, you
Hmm.
know? And if throughout the entire time if it was fun,
Yeah.
like it was fun while it was happening. So that's why back to this point of like, can you learn again to like follow this like feeling of stoke? I'm a surfer too. So like the stoke feeling, can you follow like just like like whatever, like that's the thing, like
Yeah.
you just do that. So try to organize your life more around doing that. I mean, I actually I do a lot of surfing, and there's like the surf bum archetype. There's a lot of these in California, but I see them all over. I lived on the East Coast for a while, and there was like many of the surf bums out there. And when I was working in finance, you know, arguably not a surf bum, I wanted to be a surf bum. I saw like these are people that have just like organized their entire life around something that has no external reward, no external value system. Like all they care about is like surfing every day
Yeah.
for no one else. Like they're not surfing in contests. They're not even good. They're
Yeah.
terrible surfers often. I mean, they could be good. They could be good. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're just like they've just found that that's the thing that lights them up, and they've kind of sacrificed everything. And there's sad versions of that, you know, where people like forsake other responsibilities. But like life is a bunch of trade-offs on like on that. Like, are you willing to kind of pursue your stoke full on, or do you want to like live a life where you have other responsibilities and whatnot? That actually, I'm getting the lights back on here as I do this. This is like so great. You'll be like, this will become like one of your TSA. What is it like terms? You'll have T and C's,
Yeah.
future terms and conditions of working on being on the Popko podcast. It's like you have to like have your lighting situation.
Yeah.
You can't just keep like leaving the screen. But anyways, I don't think he would care if I told a version of this story, and he may not listen, so he won't know. But my older brother, he has a life where he sort of travels around 10 months out of the year, kind of living where he wants to live. He's a consultant for a company here in California, and then he's around during the holidays. But he basically lives. He doesn't have a partner, no kids, no house, very few fixed. You know, doesn't even have a car payment. So he lives in basically like Airbnbs and stuff. Travels around the world. And so he's a version of the surf bum to me. Like he's not. It's not the same. Like if visually, if you saw it, you wouldn't say like that's a surf bum. But like he's pursuing his stoke,
Yeah.
which for him is like traveling,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have any of the trade-offs of he. So it's like if there's part of you that has like wanderlust or whatever, maybe which maybe we all have a little bit of that, but then then we've gotten into marriages and we have kids and we have houses and we have jobs, like all these things that you basically like, you've chosen, and hopefully you've been thoughtful about those choices and trade-offs, and hopefully they net out something positive for your life. And I would say for me, that's true, that it nets positive, but like,
Hmm.
there's definitely part of me that's like looking at someone like my brother or like the surf mom and being like, they've like, they're living their dream like 90% of their time,
Right.
you know? And I'm sort of like having to, my dream has to like fit into my life,
Right.
10 or 20% of the time. And it's just like, we all end up kind of like in a different place along that spectrum. There is a song about that on the record. It's called Two Sides of the Sun. It's kind of
Mhm.
sort of slightly related, the
Yeah.
closing track. So, um, anyways, I've gone off
No,
off topic.
life's strange though, man. Like, I mean, your brother's probably having a great time, but like, and maybe this won't happen, but maybe it does. Where it's the end of his life, and he's like, man, I wonder what it would have been like if I did have kids. Like, does I feel like we all kind of think about our lives in a way of, kind of just like wondering like how life would be if, we didn't make the choices we made. Not that we don't
Yeah.
want them, but it's just kind of like, oh, how would things be different? I think we'll always do that just because it's kind of curious. It's
Yeah, I
curiosity,
think that's part of human nature. It
you know?
feels like to like, you know, wonder about the path not taken, and to your point earlier about like having the one life. I mean, that's such a crazy thing about life that you sort of, I mean, lives can be complicated and have lots of different chapters and whatnot. So, but like you kind of only get the one route, you know, and
Hmm.
like there's so many different ways. I mean, I think about um, to tie it back to music, I will say if my brother is listening, I would say he would not look off. He would look at the situation I have with our three kids, and he would not be like, I wonder what it would be like if I had kids. I think he looks at, he's like, okay, I'm going to leave
Yeah.
the United States for
I'll be
10
the uncle.
months.
Yeah.
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 And I'll come back for two
Yeah.
months. Um, but oh shoot, I lost my train of thought now. What was I going to say? Darn. I had like a good story to tell. It's okay. It'll come back to me. Let's do something else.
It's funny too, but like life, like you only have a certain amount of time to do certain things too. I couldn't decide today that I wanted to be a UFC fighter at age
Right.
43. Like, just like this life is so, it happens so fast. And um, I know when I was like younger, I would always think, oh yeah, one day I'll do that. And then like 15 years go by, and you're like, shit, like that's not even in
Yeah,
the cards now.
certain paths close, and that is that's sad. Helpful though too. I think what's interesting, yeah, is like I think about this. I maybe to tie it back to the artist project of like, does the artist path close? I kind of think. I guess I'm like not an example of it not having closed, but like I kind of believe that it doesn't necessarily close, um, and that like an artist can continue to develop like late into life, and I think that's
Hmm.
been true of like a lot of artists in different different mediums or something. But I do think maybe the unfortunate thing about pursuing something like music or an art is like because there's commercial scoreboards, but like I think artists you can say, well, that doesn't matter because I'm not playing for popularity or money or whatever. I think about like many of the greatest works of art of all time were not commercially successful or critically successful during their time. Like think about like Moby Dick or something,
Hmm.
like bankrupted Herman Melville and kind of ruined his career. But it was like it was awesome,
Hmm.
and that was borne out later in life. But like that, I could tell that story. But then, am I pursuing something that's not a good use of time? Again, because like I just don't have. There's just not enough talent, or like my talents could be used elsewhere. My energy could be used elsewhere. The danger to sort of like setting your own scorecard, I guess.
Yeah.
In the Herman Melville example, is like he obviously had great conviction in what he was doing, and time and history has shown that like his conviction was worthwhile, for whatever reason, some of which is luck. And I mean, I don't think it's that lucky because I think if you read it, it is amazing. um, and so, but like, yeah, I guess it's just back to this question. I think oftentimes, like, I'm still asking this question of like, is this a good use of time? Like, how do I think about that? And in my good days, I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. That's like a stupid question.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
in my bad days, I'm asking myself that question.
What has the response been to the record now that it's out?
It's been, I would say, like, good, fine. Um,
Has
I
it left
think
you
people,
wanting more? Has it left you wanting to like, all right, this is done and I'm like stoked to do the next?
yes, although not necessarily. It's like not necessarily the response hasn't been the thing. It's been the feeling of having done the thing has made me want to do the thing, which I think again is like maybe the better version of like there's this extrinsic versus intrinsic like reward system I think that I've been retraining, which has been kind of the center of the project. And so if I was telling you like, oh yeah, like if I was here and I was like the response has been so amazing, like people love the record and that makes me feel great and that makes me want to make more music. I would say that's me missing the point.
Hmm.
I think it's been maybe the opposite, which is like I've felt like it's very hard to ask people to listen to 45 minutes of music in this day and age. We are all so, I mean, I get it. Like we're busy.
Hmm.
I don't listen to like full. There are many favorite artists that I have that like I love one of their records or something. I haven't gone back and listened to their whole discography. I mean, some of
Right.
my favorite, like really favorite artists, very influential artists that were like hugely influential for this record, for example. Like I think of people like Tom Petty or like Bruce Springsteen or like Fleetwood Mac. Like those were three records that I was playing a lot, specific records from their discography. Like, and I just love that record. And I'm not listening to any of their stuff. But then there's like new artists that are coming out, and like, so anyways, to ask people to listen to 45 minutes of an artist they've never heard of, I understand that's like a big ask. So I think the fact that mostly it feels like the people that have done that, um, that have given it the time, I and that have I've talked to about it or communicated somehow, I feel like they get it in some way. They understand what I was trying to accomplish. Whether they thought it was successful or not, I'm not sure. That's like in their heart and mind, and maybe I don't know the full extent of that. Did it connect? But like they sort of in some ways it connected. Like the communication connected, and as a result, I feel less lonely, and so that feels good. And like I think that's like maybe what I was, in a sense, what I was trying to accomplish. But the other more important thing is like just the feeling of having gotten to the end and surviving, frankly, just being like, yeah, it wasn't, whatever. Like it didn't kill me that, not everyone liked it. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. And some people were confused by it. Some people that I respect and love, friends, family or whatever, were confused or embarrassed by it. Like it didn't kill me. And I had so much fun making the music and felt like I grew so much as a person in the process that I want to keep doing it, and I'm doing it again, and I'm like working on these new tunes for the next record already, and have like a huge batch of them that I'm sorting through for a next record. It's like I think that's like the
Yeah.
win. That
Yeah.
that's like my internal definition of success, but it totally doesn't align with an external definition of success necessarily. Um, but I mean, but it's like little, little and big things like, you reaching out and being able to talk about the music and with you. I mean, that's like, that feels great. It's like to connect with even a small number of people that appreciate it, um, or appreciate what I was trying to do or what I am trying to do. Like it makes it feel a little bit less like a complete, waste of my life,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And let's say someone doesn't have 45 minutes to go through the record. What song should they um pick out to kind of get a good representation of who you are and what your music is?
Yeah, I mean, so there's like a whole single process, and we released four singles leading up to it, which partially gets at this, although I think the attempt in a single process is to kind of try to capture like a little bit of like a universal, like what's the biggest net maybe. Okay, I think I would say three songs,
Okay.
and then I can talk about why, but I'll say the three songs first. I think Hawk Circling, Wildfire, and Gold Rush
Okay.
are the three songs, and that's a total of uh, it's maybe like 11 and a half minutes total, maybe 12 minutes. I don't know, because Gold Rush is kind of a long song, but it's the last one. So, you know, but you got to get to the end of Gold Rush. I think that's a worthwhile journey. But anyways, the reason I picked those songs is I think um, they do a good job of sort of encompassing the sides of the album in my view or whatever, like of the types of music. There's kind of like this kind of like Americana thing a little bit, which I think Hawk Circling is sort of somewhere in
Hmm.
that vein. There's this kind of like indie folk thing, which I think Wildfire is kind of doing. And there's like an alternative thing that sits in between those. There's worlds that I think Gold Rush um, maybe sits at the most interesting intersection, and maybe like shows the most of like maybe where I came from, and also where I'm going weirdly. Um, yeah, but it was an interesting process, but like because I think genre's a tricky,
Yeah.
it like boxes people in maybe too unnecessarily, and but I think this music is at the intersection in a challenging part of the genre world. And I say that only because like Apple Music, for example, in the its editorial team, like Hawk Circling was on their New and Americana playlist, which was very cool. Um, then Wildfire came out, and that got put on their indie folk playlist, and it's still on there, which is sweet. Great playlist, has some like of my favorite songs of all time on it, which was like a great honor. Uh, and then Thick and Thin was the next single. They put that on their New and Rock
Hmm.
playlist, and then uh, and then the last single was Compensation, and they put that in alternative, New and
Okay.
Alternative.
It's
And then
interesting.
Gold Rush was the focus track, so like they that wasn't on any of the Apple editorial playlists. But I think that those are sort of the four. It's not poles, but it's like if it was a square or some sort of shape with four, like a spider
Yeah.
chart or something. If I was a consultant, it would be like there's rock, there's Americana, there's folk, um, and there's alternative, and it's somewhere, the music lives somewhere in there, and like not all the songs are all of those things, or some are more than others. But I mean, that's just like the way I think about it. But again, I'm not like sure I love genre. But what does that resonate? Does that make sense to you as a listener?
Yeah. I mean, well, I even heard some like jazz vibes in Letting
Mm.
Loose.
Yes. Well, there are seventh chords. Nothing's more jazzy than a
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's another example. I can't of like that thing of like you learn one chord and then it's like the quote every when you're a hammer everything's a nail. I
Hmm.
think I like heard some song and it had seventh chords, and then I went to the piano single, like that was a song that was more inspired than crafted. I went to the piano. I was I had heard something that had seventh chords, loved that feeling, said I'm going to write a song with no rhymes, and voice memo, single take, and that was basically the song. And very, I mean, we didn't use that version. We like recorded a new version, but that was basically the song.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of bands I talk to, like genre is a hard thing. Just like most recently, it was that they are labeled as pop punk, but they're pop punk or post hardcore, whatever it might be, and their response for genre was Warped Tour.
Mm.
Thought that was cool.
Yeah. So yes, okay. So, but like, I also was interested, like, in why you reached out to me, and was thinking of like, does this make sense? But there's something. Maybe it's that the first music I learned that I played was Blink 182, and I think it's like, did you come up from learning songs from like, um, I don't know who would be like a great classic songwriter. Did you listen to Bob Dylan as a kid, or did you listen to Blink 182? And I think in some ways, your artistic journey starts in different places. You may end up in the same place. So one thing I love to do is I like always love listening to like understanding my favorite artists and like doing that go back thing, you know?
Hmm.
And it's sort of, where does it always end up? Very few people say Blink 182, by the way, which is unfortunate because
Great.
they're so great. My first concert was a Blink 182 concert, but they were definitely my first music love. Uh, but yeah, a lot of people will end up with like Bob Dylan. So that person, me in this story, that starts out in their songwriting toolkit, the things, it's like the things you create, you can't really escape your influences, right? So if you just listen to a bunch of like that stuff, or like emo, it's like the moves that they were doing, Jimmy World, like these, whatever moves they were doing, it was pop related, but it was also like, it was something, it was like pop was something else with this
Yeah.
punk influence or whatever. And yeah, you can never fully escape those influences. And as much as I think as I've gotten older, I've of course tried to enrich myself with like songwriter bona fides, and think I've benefited from that or whatever. But there's something that's like, pop punk at the center of what I'm doing still, I think. Like whether it's obvious or not, like I think it's there. And did wonder if like somehow that like resonates with you
I'll
or
have to go
something.
back and listen again now that you said that. Yeah.
Like, let me put it this way: the drummer, that made the record, uh, who I hadn't met until we got to Sonic Ranch in Texas. We both showed up at the airport at El Paso, got in the same cab to go out to the studio that was like an hour away. So we got to talking. Turns out he's a huge Blink 182 fan. First song, and he hadn't heard any of the demos or anything, which is an interesting way to make music. It's like, just get good musicians like first take like on something, like
Hmm.
see how they react or something. He was extremely tired though at the time. Alex, I love you. If he listens to this, anyways, I play him Hawk Circling. We start kind of working on a drum arrangement for it, and he's like, "There's something kind of like a Blink 182 song about this," and so I think I was kind of insulted at the time, although I should have been taking this as a compliment, right? But there's something about like the song structure that you learn. It's yeah, it's like there's something there, whether it's like song structure, or like the harmonic moves or the melodic moves, or um, I don't know. Really, if I get into it theoretically, I'm getting the light on. Don't worry. The fact that they always use these like power chords,
Hmm.
do you know, when you say you don't make music, I don't know, like you still, do you play guitar at all?
I had nothing, nothing. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's never too late." I'm like, the
But
ship has sailed.
like the power chord, this is
Yeah.
probably a little out of tune, but it's like you play the 1 and the 5. But like, this is the difference in that like songwriter heritage. I think it's like, did you grow up listening to thirds, which would be like, instead of just playing this C power chord, which is like C, G, the fifth, and C again, the octave, do you play, C, E, G? This sound is like the C major chord, which has all three. It has the third in there. So there's something about like not liking the third, the major third, because it's all the cowboy chords, like and I don't know, I don't have, do I have original sound for musicians on? Yeah, I do. So you can maybe hear, but like that's your like G major chord. or a version of it with like the third versus like that's G5 or the power chord version of G without the third. There's something about the third that I mean, actually, you know, what's that Green Day song?
Mm-hmm.
They were the first. That was like the first time I had ever heard someone really like use the full like actual major chord, like the third. But which is embarrassing. But that's fine. I'm just telling the truth here. And yeah, I think I've sort of learned over time these concepts, but I think for a long time, my music, what felt good to me was something that came up from that like pop punk, which was a very unschooled way of making music.
Mm-hmm.
They basically didn't know anything about like music theory, and they didn't have until they got into like studios with like better producers, they were making things that were kind of like, well, that's not like really the way that you would do it. They weren't making songs that sort of made sense the
Right.
way pop music made sense. And so there's something kind of like funny about that history. That history's like in my listening bones and my like, this feels true to me, that I've been trying to train myself out of. But I think you can never, like, you never lose the smell or something
Right.
of like someone who just doesn't hear the third.
Yeah, I don't know anything about notes, chords, nothing.
It doesn't. It honestly is not even. I'd quibble with whether it's an asset or not.
I'm sure it helps a little bit.
It helps a little bit, unless it starts to get in the way because you start to like think about things too much. I would say like the majority of that record that's out now, I didn't know any of this stuff. Like I've sort of learned all this stuff over the last like 4 years. And I go back and forth on whether it's good or not. You know, I can sort of solve problems now in songs because I have a way to think about things. I have like solutions to problems, but it's harder to completely get to that space where you're just completely following your intuition. And I think a lot of writers will try to disorient themselves purposefully by like putting a guitar into a tuning that they don't understand or playing an instrument that's not their primary instrument. I actually during the writing process was taking kind of a writing class through this organization called School of Song, which is very cool. If anyone listening hasn't heard of School of Song, it's awesome. They have like these amazing teachers come on and do these lectures and songwriting workshops, like all through Zoom. But I did one where Adrienne Lenker was the teacher or the professor, and it was like life changing. She's incredible. She's a huge influence. Her writing and music, but really her approach to creativity generally and songwriting more specifically, and disorienting herself more specifically. And she's an artist that I think would be proud to say that she doesn't know any of this shit. Like she would pretend to not understand what I was just talking about. I think in reality, she went to Berklee School of Music for a few years, so I think she knows what I'd be talking about. But she'd say it's a disadvantage
Right.
if you asked her, because she'd say like it's creating some rule or structure
Right.
that is gonna like lock you into something. And so what she loves to do is put a guitar in a tuning that she doesn't understand. She's a fantastic guitar player, knows her way around a guitar, but she'll put a guitar in a tuning she doesn't know, she's not familiar with. And then she'll just like, the way she described it, she's like, play one note and then like put your hand somewhere else, like kid on a jungle gym, play another note. Like, how does it feel? Does it feel the way you want it to, or like the way you expected? And like, okay, if you're okay with that, like try one more move and just like build something, but with complete like intuition, trusting your feeling, totally not knowing like, are these notes in the same, like what key am I in, and are these notes in the key, and what am I doing? And that was super inspiring, and it led directly to the song Compensation on the record, because that's in a weird tuning, um, like a C, open C tuning that like I'd never put a guitar in before, and was just absolutely executing that playbook of like just messing around, finding something that felt good, following that feeling. At the same time, I had to kill a rattlesnake, long story, and like the boom, put the two ideas together, we get a song out of it. And then Letting Loose also came together at that same moment of, because I'm not primarily a piano player. I know my way around the piano a little bit, but it's like a disorienting thing. But I like learned that one hand motion of like, this is a seventh chord. Wants to go back to, and that's basically the song. And like, there's some like embellishments a little bit on the edges, and my producer Adam Nash made it sound better than that. But yeah.
Well, it's a great record. Um, it's just a beautiful collection of songs, and I'm
Thanks,
glad
man.
I came across it. And we're halfway through 2026. What does the rest of the year look like for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple times I'm working on new music, which is super exciting. Feels like a little different, like I said, kind of using some new tools and new sounds. And yeah, like I think it's gonna be, it's early, It's I think I had this batch of like 34 songs, and then I've been working with a collaborator to kind of like pare them down like we did last time, and so now we've got it down to like 16 or 17 songs, and now I'm kind of working out demos on and doing some of that demo production myself. I go through this process of like the song. The first time I'll commit an idea just like with a voice memo on the iPhone, which does a great job. I actually have fallen in love with the voice memo functionality on the iPhone, and have this like one touch button where I can just like press this one button and it immediately goes to voice memo. And I'm like capture ideas. Like, I mean, literally I'll be, I'll be like feeding my baby, food or something. And then like a melody comes into mind, and I'm like I press it, sing the melody. You can hear her blabbering in the background, but then it's there, and
Yeah.
it's just like so frictionless. But anyways, I'll try to capture like a proper version of a first recording on the voice memo, and then I go over to this thing called the OP1. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. It has
Mm-mm.
like a funny ball on the this thing's like a pop filter, but it's basically like a 4-track recorder. So I give myself 4 tracks, and it has a built-in microphone, and it has like a built-in synthesizer, so I can like add keyboard sounds and some drums. It has like a built-in drum machine, and I give myself 4 tracks to kind of flesh out the idea. And then I've just sort of ripped the band-aid and started getting back into a computer and doing proper demos when things get more complicated and I want to try out more complex arrangements and things. So anyways, I think the next 6 months means like a lot of writing and rewriting and demoing some things out, figuring out like what this next record wants to become. And then I'm going to be playing some shows, which is exciting and something I haven't done a ton of. I've done a little bit of, and would like to do more of. I just, I'm up here in San Luis Obispo, California. I don't have like a huge local community of artists and musicians. The people I worked with on the record were from mostly from LA and New York, but the drummer lives nearby here, and so we've started to kind of like assemble a band, and we're going to do a record release show when the physical vinyl finally prints. I'll send you a copy thank you for having me on
Oh
the
wow,
show
that's super
when
kind of
that
you.
comes out. And yeah, so getting that, like that whole live sort of setup is a whole, I think, new world. Kind of the performer aspect of it, which it's not really my. I do enjoy doing it, but I I guess I'm not gonna be. I'm not like the guy that wants to be playing at the like winery or bar to a very cold audience that like doesn't give a shit. Like
Yeah.
that's just it's just too it's too dehumanizing. I can't take it. My ego can't take it. You know, I wish I was stronger. Um, I'd rather be playing at like a super small venue where there were three people, but they actually were there for the music. And
Hmm.
so we're there's a few places around here, and I've kind of finding my way into the crowd of people that make and play that kind of music. And so yeah, hopefully there'll be more live shows. I'd love to like get out to other places further afield. I've gotten a few, you know, you get like some random DMs or something on Instagram where people are like, "Oh man, if you ever come to like Denver or Chicago," and like that's cool. Those are cool. You know, I'd love to be able to play and share the music more broadly. So I'm kind of open to that, but I think, you know, we'll see. The project is like, it's kind of always felt like at any moment the thing could just like, I'd just stop because I'd be like, that stopped feeling good. So I'm quitting now. But I think I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, I'm just, it's just going.
Yeah.
The thing's going again. Damn the torpedoes. It's like, what else am I going to do? It feels like a good use of my energy. It's like the most exciting thing other than my family right now. And so let's try to pursue it and get better and better every day.
Hell yeah. Well, it's only been out for what, 2, 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
we've got the rest of the year to push it out there, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time tonight and talk about the music and just life. And this is always fun. I like when
Well,
we,
I appreciate you, um, yeah, reaching out and spending the time, staying up super late, not falling asleep.
no, I'll fall asleep at work tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm not that important.
Well, good man. It's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for
Jonathon
having me.
Penn, new album. It took a long time to get young, streaming everywhere on vinyl eventually when it finally gets pressed, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So,
End of August. It'll
very cool.
finally be pressed.
Very cool. Well, best of luck with it, man. I hope it does well.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time. And stick around for 1 minute after I hit stop.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, man.